I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Uh, at the very outset, I will like to talk about that what the objective of the webinar is already being cleared out. I will like to thank Shamboda. I will like to thank Sharmishtha. Shamboda and Sharmishtha, I had communicated with you too, and you have given the consent of coming and sharing your thoughts. In the month of November, everyone, everywhere, specifically in Bengal and also throughout India, we are talking about Ritwik Ghatak. And so many different ways we are required to look into his work. But again, uh, w- why we require this 100 year to go back to this man who is very much relevant. So if you look into history, how Ghatak had been defined, he had been given the tag of the father of the Indian New Wave. He's the radical activist of the IPTA. He's the inspiring teacher of FTII. He's of course a social critic, but the main theme which had appealed to me and for which Ghatak is going to be remembered throughout and he's going to be eternal to us is he's the perfect example of the people's artist. And a man whose films never talked about the heroes, but his films talked about hunger. His films talked about home, and his films talked about hope. So, at this very critical juncture, at every point of time, we find that how much this man had been relevant. So, on these occasions, whatever we talk in the seminars and the conferences, the entire plan of working it out was not to fill the evening with literary jargons, but to have a kind of an informal adda about this man who is so very much admired by most of us, not only in Bengal but throughout India. We may talk, we may come up with papers, we may come up with certain observations. But again, on the very outset, I will like to congratulate Shammuda for editing this wonderful book. And this book is something which was the need of the hour. I'm just going to show you this book, and this is and where I'll congratulate you, Shammuda, for this wonderful book. This is the book Unmechanical, and perhaps uh, our discussion and our the informal adda that I was talking about at the very outset, I will introduce Shamoda to everyone, and I will ask Shamoda uh, just tell me or tell us that what was the journey? What was your journey when you decided to compile this wonderful book, and also tell us something about your connection with the Ghatak family? Shamoda, over to you.
Should I switch on the video because
Yes, yes,
everyone
yes,
had the
of course.
videos?
Yes.
Yeah, everyone had their videos off. So yeah, thank you very much for calling me. Thank you very much, and to the two ladies who did the introduction. Thank you very much. Um, I went through your book as well, Victor. I mean that I should clarify that first, that because you've said such kind words about the book. I really liked your book. I thought it was detailed, it was thoughtful, and obviously you've worked on it for a while, and that showed. Thank you for doing that as well. Um, my connection with Ghatak Ritwik Babu is zilch. He was my Mars. I'll keep it to English if that's okay. Um,
Yes, yes.
Ma's Choto Kaka, which means Ma's youngest paternal uncle. And but I never met him. He died before I was born, so there's no connection there. But of course, there's a very strong connection I have or feel with his work, which has nothing to do with the family, which is perhaps the connection you feel with his work, which is why you've done this book as well. And so many people who are sitting here, I see 43 people on the window there. So there's a connection all these people feel to some extent, more or less, whatever it is with his work, which is exactly what I feel. And that has nothing to do with the family connection, but it is there. And of course, that helped me put together the book to some extent. I think there are about 7 or 8 essays out of 50 by members of the family, including the two very well-known writers, Mohasheta Devi and Nobarun Bhattacharya, who are all part of the family, as well as Mukherjee Ghatak. He's a professor of economics at London School of Economics. Ghatak, Mukherjee Ghatak. And his wife Monishita Das, who's a film scholar, as well as Porambroto, of course, is also part of the family. Porambroto did the introduction to the book. So all these people are involved. So the family connection certainly helped in that regard. Your other question was about wanting to do the book. Now, I have actually written on Ghatak from time to time, not as an expert, but as a journalist almost, who's gone through Ghatak's books, has read on him, and so on. And I've occasionally written essays for magazines and websites on Ghatak. Not the only subject I've written on. It's a subject I've written on from time to time. I certainly had no plans of writing a book on Ghatak. I haven't written it anyway. It's an edited volume with essays by many people. It's not something I've written, but certainly the thought that Ghatak Ritwik Babu was a filmmaker and a person who were both very fascinating in many ways. Very interesting, very conflicted, very complex. Just someone who I found very interesting for a long time, and I perhaps had this in the back of my mind to do something someday, but the desire to do something now, this year, happened because the family sort of met online. Everyone's scattered around the world, so people met last year and wanted to celebrate his centenary. Which reminds me that Mohasheta Devi's centenary is coming up in March. But there was this desire to do something with Ritwik Babu, and because I have published a few books and I kind of am involved with publishing, I thought I could do this, and that's how it started. It perhaps wasn't the book I initially thought I would do, but it seemed the best thing to do right now. And fortunately, the response has been nice. So I'd like to think it's done what it was meant to do. And which someone said at the start that there are 2 books released this year, yours and mine, but there are actually a few more books that I've heard of. I know there's one that Professor Sanjay Mukhopadhyay and Gautam Ghosh have put together for the West Bengal government. I'm not totally sure, but they have put together a book on Ritwik Babu. And I believe a book is coming out in Kerala and possibly one in Maharashtra. And there are so many festivals. KIFF, of course, celebrated Ritwik Ghatak very well. I think there's something happening in IFFI. There are places, I get these mailers from many people, and he's being celebrated everywhere. And a couple more books are coming out. But I'm very curious to know why you thought, Ritwik's writings have been translated in the past, especially short stories. I don't know of the existence of too many poems, but there are, of course, many essays on cinema, many essays that he's written, which have been collected in Cinema and I, Rows and Rows of Fences, and so on and so forth, which are a collection of Ritwik's essays. Why did you think a book on Ritwik's writing, since he's more known as a filmmaker, was relevant right now? Maybe our audience will also be curious.
Yes. Actually, the thing is, whenever, how we Bengalis tend to look into things, we always love to play with binary, and we always love to stereotype a person. So, why playing with binaries, like Ghoti versus Bangal, like, Ilish versus Chingri. Like, similarly, it's almost like, East Bengal versus Mohun Bagan. So it's Ritwik Ghatak versus Satyajit Ray. So again, it's this kind of a thing, and they tend to stereotype Ghatak, and primarily based on what, his works tend to showcase the impact of partition. I think that Ghatak is just more than partition. It's just, there's so many ways. And whenever we talk about the research or any kind of a serious academic discourse, I've seen that from 1953 onwards, with the production, in association of the book, in association of the film Nagorik, generally most of the research work is being done after 1953. So I asked myself not to, not to go through the same ordeal once again. And fortunately, I had, I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, I had visited Bangladesh last year in the month of February, and even there were people who are very much interested in partition. But the more dismal scenario is like that, both in Bangladesh and also in India. Today's generation, they hardly know much about these films. Okay, what they have grown up, seeing Satyajit Ray only. So I wanted to do something new, and my book primarily featured a particular phase, 1942, 1944, and the phase in which he was writing the short stories was in between 1947 and 1950. So he was moving from Kanpur to Rajshahi, and then from Rajshahi to Bahrampur. So it was almost like in close to 100 short stories,
Hmm.
but some researchers say that it's about 50 short stories. Unfortunately, most of the short stories are lost, and even the ancestral house is not there.
Hmm.
So in the year 1987, it was Ritwik Memorial Trust could recover and publish only 17 short stories. And uh, the more interesting point is that we can capture the evolving Ghatak in these short stories. The evolving Ghatak, the man who was so very much into theatre, his friendship with Kumar Rai, and then coming here and then getting associated with IPTA. So again, 1944, the production of Nabanno, which is a very important influence in his year. Again, 1950, Nimai Ghosh and the film called Chinnamul. So 44 and 50, another transformation. These are all taking place before 53. So the major part of my research was to capture these years. Uh, we have seen that his extreme obsession towards nature,
Hmm.
and if you look into my title, El Dorado, I would say this is the name which will come repeatedly in Bari Theke Paliye. So I have often written that from Kanchon to Nilkontho Bakshi or Nilkontho is a journey from innocence to experience.
Hmm.
So the boy who is being referring to El Dorado, El Dorado had been that undivided Bengal for Ghatak. So 42 IPTA, 44 Nabanno, 50 is Chinnamul. So I have tried to look at this man who was to some extent obsessed with nature, and he had severe preoccupation or liking for Karl Marx. At the same time, it was a happy marriage between Marx and Jung. He had tremendous amount of desire for working out what as the collective unconscious, and Eric Newman's concept of great mother. So again, we have seen that how he had presented women. So again, all these were the seeds which eventually germinated to give birth to Anita in Negeta Katara. So again, uh, I've seen most of the research work that has been done in Ghatak had neglected this 1942-44, what this man was doing. And I would use two words. The first one is extreme restlessness,
Hmm.
and also, a very famous going that let there be anarchy in art. Let there be in, and he's a man who was searching for form when things had happened to him, and he wanted to find some form by means of which he can communicate with people, and that's why from the very beginning he was the people's artist.
Hmm.
And he was never settled in particular thing, because he was a man who wanted to communicate. So the short stories would be Kanchon giving a shape to his El Dorado, and then he would be severely disillusioned. And this is where I found Ghatak to be most honest amongst all the artists. Even Ray, to some extent, in the 60s, has celebrated, what this utopia of a newly independent India was all about. But Ghatak had talked about the fractured independence. So it's all about the disillusionment. So again, all these were, I had tried to, express through my book. So again, that's the main reason. And I do have one question for you as well. uh, tell me, Shamoda, why the title unmechanical? Is there any specific reason for that?
I mean, if you look at Ghatak's work, it's, you know, I couldn't have called it E flat. I
Hmm.
couldn't have called it the golden thread. I mean, unmechanical is a word that sort of jumps out. It's one of the English translations of Ojantrik, uh,
Yes.
the other being pathetic fallacy. But I also felt that the word described Ghatak well. Unmechanical, the opposite of unmechanical is mechanical. But
Hmm.
when you say unmechanical, it also suggests human. It also suggests people. It also suggests, if mechanical is someone who does what is expected of you, kind of. A machine does what it's programmed to do. Whereas Ghatak was a nonconformist, he was uncompromising, he did it his way. He was not a machine. Basically, he was not mechanical with his work, with his thoughts, with his ideas, etc. So, of course, the word is from Ojantrik, but I felt that the word described Ghatak best among the words that were connected to his work. If I look in the English dictionary, of course, there might have been a better word to describe Ghatak. But I felt that this word will resonate with Ghatak fans, and it also describes Ghatak, which was pretty much the idea. I like the title. I quite like the title. I don't know if everyone does. I think it's a good looking book, and it's got pretty good content. I don't know how many people like the title, but I really like it.
No, even I like the title a lot. I just wanted to.
No, no, but that was the reason. That was the reason. And also, someone asked me this question in an interview recently, and I also felt the need to describe fragments. I felt that fragments was because all these 50 essays are almost like pieces of a jigsaw. Um, so instead of calling it pieces in 50 pieces, fragments just sounded better because his life was kind of fragmented, his work was fragmented, his everything about him was very fragmented, fractured, you said. Similarly, it was very fragmented, so I felt the word fragmented worked well to my mind as part of the title. But are we going to ask questions only of each other, or should we make it should we just talk to each other, Victor, you and I, or should we ask people to join in
Of course,
anyone wants?
of course,
I'm happy to
we'll
talk.
be
I'm happy to
asking.
talk with you. I'm happy
There
to
can
Yes,
talk
be
with
yes,
you.
questions from everyone.
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah. That's my take it.
I do have a question for Sharmishtha.
Hmm.
Sharmishtha, I hope that I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had been writing on films. You had been taking interview of the film directors. Uh, you know, at the present scenario, the Bengali film industry has changed so much. But again, the themes related to partition had been there. I can just give you a few examples. Like in the year 2013, Kamaleshwar Mukherjee coming up with Megata Katara, and also then onwards, 15 Srijit Mukherjee's Rajkahini, Gautam Ghosh's Shankochil 2016, again Bishorjon by Kaushik Ganguly, and 2019 Vijaya, the sex sequel. So all these films, which are very recent, since you are into this, you are making this film reviews and you are interviewing the artists and the directors. All these films had talked about partition. They have problematized the border. They had talked about the situation of women. But do you think that somehow they do have kind of an impact of Ghotok in their work, or somehow in the present day Bengali industry, it has changed so much that we don't find his influences as such? What is your take on this?
You're on mute. You're on
Your
mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much. See, first of all, I'm a very biased person regarding Ghatak.
okay.
Yes, because when I was growing up, Victor, uh, my father was an ardent Ritwik Ghatak fan. So, whatever I have seen or whatever I have heard of him, I have read of him, this one persona. mesmerized my life. Because, I was a part of IPTA movement in my time in a small city of Bengal, not even in Kolkata, in a small city of Bengal. And when we used to sing the Hemango Bishwash or the Sholil Chaudhary songs, Sholil Chaudhary was absolutely contemporary of Ritwik Ghatak. We used to do it from a faith or from a belief that there is a time is coming which will change, and which will change for the mass, where the human quotient in the human race will be honored in a certain way. So things have changed, perspectives have changed. But coming back to your question, no. If you ask me whether in a Kaushik Ganguly Bishorjon or Bijoya, or in a Srijit's Raj Kahini, or I would like to, keep Gautam Ghosh a little, away from the other filmmakers in terms of making, because there was a very, very uh, popular quote of Shupriya Chaudhuri. She said that Ritwik Ghatak was a man who knew the camera, who knew the editing portion also, and who knew, obviously, who knew how to write a script. So he was a genius of that kind that other geniuses of that time were very afraid of him. And that, there are ample stories which we can, discuss here also, but those are known stories. Uh, but these people, the next generation of filmmakers, or the next generation of filmmakers, because Srijit Kaushik Da, even Gautam Das, next generation. So, 2 generations ago, no, I don't think that their film touched me, or my kind of intellect, what I have, a small little intellect, their films not touched me in the way how Ritwik has touched me. Uh, a man, a film director, whose one film you can had the commercial, or that thing, this is a hit film, which is Mege Dakatara,
Hmm.
which carries only one line, which will, I don't know for how many centuries more, that we will remember the line, Dada Ami Kintu Bachte Cheyechilam. And
Hmm.
that thing, the empathy of the viewers towards Nita, that is why I started with this SIR form thing. It actually grows. The day I had that in my hand, that paper, I had that in my hand, this line, or there are other lines of Ritik's films that pierced my mind. That, we use things as for political agenda, and films are political. You cannot
Yeah.
make anything a political. There is nothing called a political. Even you and me discussing our mobile phones, a pen, or everything, there has to be, you know, it is political. So,
Yeah.
no, not that much. I would say Srijit's Rajkahini will give you some essence of, how Manto has seen a thing, Sadat Hassan Manto has seen a thing. It might give you that perspective. Or Kaushik Das Bishorjon can give you a, should I say it? I don't know. But to me, quote unquote, please don't mind anyone if you are a Kaushik Da fan. Kaushik Da is very dear and near to me. But it gave me a Turun Mujumdar kind of vibe. Nothing in the way how Ritwik has touched me, nothing in the way how Ray has touched me, and even when you were talking of Nagorik and all, nothing in the way how Mrinal Sen has touched me. So it is difficult. Yes, you're true when we go to people today. But again, I'm telling you, I don't want to negate anyone, because they are making films, or they are creating something in today's time. So the challenges are different, the stories they are picking and trying to contemporize it in this time. It is something uh, different. It cannot be like that until and unless you take a chinnomul to make a film as a text.
Hmm.
But subtext wise also, where I actually would like to tell you that I expect it from certain filmmakers, but the names you told, no, they have not touched these works have not touched me. Or I would say, I think most of the people, as Ritik would have done, because that is sheer brilliance. That is sheer brilliance. The again, I'm telling you, film is a very technical thing. Writing is something which, whatever you have in your mind, you can put it in words. But while filming that is there is a major technical way of execution. How you take the text to the screen, it is a completely different ball game. So there also, this man's geniosity is superb. And yes, you might tell, or one might say, that but he failed in his 7 films. It is only one film that we can talk about, which is popular and all. But again, then this man, when he had left FTII, came back. We know those famous quotes, which say, सावधानी से चलना, इस धरती पे घटक ने चला है, घटक ने अपना पाव रखे है. So that is the thing. Even if you are not commercially successful, but your legacy continues till 100 years, and sitting in a politically volatile time, we again and again have to go back to that man for our mental refuge. So this is my point.
Wonderful answer.
No, I
Okay.
think partition. If I can just butt in,
Yes.
people making films about partition now. The examples you took, Victor, and I'm not an expert like Sharmishtha Devi, but they're picking stories that are interesting. They're not part of it, and they can't be. It's not their fault. They're just picking stories that interest them and telling them. Maybe again, like Sharmishtha Devi, I agree. Gautam Ghosh is a different story altogether. And also, both Padmanudir Maji and Shankochil were produced by Habibur Rahman, who produced Tita Shetty Nodinam. So there's a completely different connection there. Uh, you know, and Gautam Ghosh, of course, is much older than the other filmmakers you mentioned. So
Sensitivity is also different, na?
sensibility is completely different. I think Par is one of the greatest films ever made in India, across languages, across everything. Gautam Ghosh is a completely different filmmaker. I mean, I have spoken to many people who feel he hasn't done anything great after that, after Par. I don't know. I've liked a couple of his films, but Par is incredible. Point is, he's from a different time altogether. Kaji, leave out Gautam Ghosh, and the others are just looking for interesting stories to tell. Whether they're doing it well or not is a different question altogether. But they can't carry forward that legacy, so to say, because they're not from the same school, they're not from the same sensibility, etc., etc. And one small thing before, in case somebody else also wants to join in, partition. I think Victor, you mentioned it initially. I find partition very incidental in Ghatak's work. It is the context. Yes, 47, he was making his films in 50s and 60s, and obviously partition, since you did mention that I'm from the same family, I can tell you that half the family was here, half the family was there. There were all these fractured family, forget fractured independence, and all those things affected us like it affected many people, millions of people. It impacted him, yes, but all his stories, partition is just the impact. It's the context, it's around that, but the stories were entirely, it could have been something else altogether. He could have made the same films today with SIR as the context, or a couple of years back with NRC as the context, and so on and so forth. He could have made the same film because his stories were about rootlessness and searching for a place in the world, finding a spot for myself, identity, etc. Partition, of course, gave it the context. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that partition is, to my mind, very incidental in his work, but it provides a context, and that's very important.
True, it's true. But the nuance things, that, as you said, and I also tried to say in my opening speech, that this loss of identity,
Yeah,
rootlessness, coming from one country to another, shifting your places, it is eternal. It is now also going on. What about the Rohingyas, the Gaza
everywhere.
people? I tried to say those. But a person who is in a dilemma, what is my identity? And also it is, I think, the responsibility of, if you are a very conscious filmmaker. See, filmmakers make films of their choices, but why these people are great, Ritik, Mrinal, they are great in a way that they uh, put things in perspective, and that context also in perspective. So now, even if now, when the entire turmoil in Bangladesh, my neighboring country, we speak the same language, we sing the same songs, we share the almost the same food. Even we, if we are not concerned about a person who is losing an identity there or here during this exchange, then how am I making an art form in a way that it will touch viewers
Yeah,
hearts?
absolutely.
How? This loss of identity is not about India, Bangladesh, or
No,
anything. It is even more than that. But even
100%.
this loss of identity is, should be, or can be, or could be, a subject of a film. Where Shamo is telling it correctly, that the other thing is incidental. It will happen. But this thing, this, especially this thing, why was আমরা বলি না যে he became senile, he went out of his mind. These pains actually, mentally tortures a creator to create great things, which will even become greater afterwards. But at that point of thing, think of that maker, think of that creator. These things, they continuously harp on their minds. Their personal lives getting jeopardized because of that thing, which is stuck in his mind, is not coming out properly, is not taking shape properly. And that is the struggle. And that is the struggle of a great writer, a great performer, a great filmmaker, a great visionary. So
$100%.
we are lacking that right now. That is what
100%.
always bothers me. That is the thing we are lacking. Yes, we are telling interesting stories. We are doing great short divisions. Those are looking very nice, but it is not reaching my heart. One say Komal Gandhar or Subarno Rekha or Ajantrik, it stays, for 100 years. Even those films are not popular. They were not, seen by many. But those are the text a film studies student has to go through. আজও পর্যন্ত ওগুলো নিয়েই আমাদের গবেষণা.
Absolutely, absolutely. একদম।
Young people like you are coming up with books on Ghatak. So that is the, I see the ray of hope,
Hmm.
or say the Ghatak of hope.
No, in the same context, it's important because I mentioned context and I probably said it loosely.
Yeah.
It's at least Ketan Mehta, Gautam Ghosh, Adur, Janu Bodua in the book, in my book, have mentioned each of them how Ghatak kept telling them, make films on subjects you know about. Make films on subjects I mean, we've read this elsewhere also, but I was reminded of it by these people while working on the book. Make films on subjects you know about. In case of Partition, it was a subject Ghatak knew about intimately. If you look at Meenal Babu's films or Satyajit Babu's films, completely different films. And I hate this Trinity business. They were completely different filmmakers making completely different films at different times. They have the same quality of making films on subjects they knew about and milieux they knew about. And when they went out of that milieu, they didn't make great films. I don't want to take names that are, I don't want to get into there. But when they went out of their comfort zone in terms of knowing what they were talking about, they didn't make great films. But they made great films otherwise, all three of them.
And also, I want to mention a thing here. See, the text they were using at that point in time while making films. See, a Ritwik Ghatak and a Torun Mujumdar both wanted to do Sangsar Shimante.
Hmm.
So Torun Mujumdar, we know that he made it. He got a scope to make it. But when he was making the set of Sangsar Shimante, Ritwik Ghatak went there to see what was he making. Not that he was of the same idea, or their ideas were same, or they thought on the same line, completely different line. But this is what, the text they are choosing, because both the filmmakers understood that whatever they are trying to make, they know of the subject. That is what Shamu was saying. Ki
Yeah.
do films on subject, do films on subject which your life or you have been gone through. While saying this, I must mention it, that till Buddhadev Dasgupta, I would say, from the greats till Buddhadev Dasgupta, we the viewers, had a habit of watching a film in the director's names. See, like I'm saying you, this is, Ritwik's kind of camera. This is Buddhadev Dasgupta's way of capturing a screen, because we used to see the film from the director's angle or the director's point of view. Later, the digital part came, multi-camera shoot and all. The story gets a little vague, or the perspective gets a little vague. Then we started the journalists also started saying that, there can be two, three point of views or 100 point of views, which I am strictly against. Because if a filmmaker is making a film, when a writer is writing a story, it is completely his point of view, and as a reader you read, and if you can see the picture through his view, it is communicated. Now someone is making one scene in a certain way, with a certain camera angle, with certain dialogues being said in a certain way, the light falling on you in a certain way, makes a scene, na? And that, if that is not communicated in the director's way, then I have a problem with the scene. Then I fail to understand what this scene was there used in this film to communicate with the viewers. So this point of view thing, which we later on we are, slipping out of it, not only in films but in everything. Say Sholil Chaudhary, we can understand Sholil Chaudhary's music, just, it is his birth centenary as well. Just listening to him, not only Sholil Chaudhary, if you listen to a Shudin Dasgupta song also, you'll understand this is a Shudin Dasgupta song. But we are again losing that identity also, afterwards. That is again a big problem for me. As a viewer, as a writer, as a reader, it creates a problem in my mind if I can't understand the maker's point of view.
Yes, absolutely. And our discussion, our conversation is, taking a very positive note. I hope that most of the listeners who are listening to us and they are being able to get a kind of an idea. And also, I want to take questions from the participants as well. If you are willing to communicate, or if you are willing to ask any question to our panelists, they are free to do that. I do have a question for Shamuda. Shamuda, another wonderful part about this particular book is, since we were talking about partition, throughout India, we have seen that partition has been showcased in novel, in films, in short stories, and somehow I feel that this is an area which we should also research when we are reading more on Ghatak. Is that what about his plays? What about theatre? Uh, Even when we read Manto, we read the short stories. So even when we talk about Ismat Chuktai, again, we talk about short stories. So again, so your book do have a section on theatre, which is a very important statement, because we don't know really that what the dramatists were doing, and this is where the impact of Nobanno on Ghatak and his play Dolil, and also his film. He was the assistant director of Chinnomul, and he went on to make Nagorik. So behind Nagorik, behind Dolil, both the impact of Chinnomul and also the IPT, they were there. So again, if we look into the book and if we study from that perspective, the question I really I don't have any answer is that what happened to the other playwrights? Why not partition at that point of time, where what had happened? And that's why I feel that the section that specifically talk about theater and how Ghatak was looking into theater, and also it's a journey from, it started from writing poems, then short stories, then plays, and from plays he had been making films. So even the why I raise this topic, that if we look into Komul Gandhar, if in literature, when we take the classes, we often use the word play within a play. In Komul Gandhar, it is play within a film, and it is also in a way referring to what had happened to IPTA. So it has got number of commentaries, not only about partition, but also about the theater that was being, that what the experience of theatricality at that point of time. It's a newly independent country, which at that point of time was celebrating without much reason that why they are celebrating, but also numerous problems which IPTA had, and no one was having that boldness to speak the truth. And this is where I feel that both Ritwik's work, as in Dolil, and then moving on to Nagorik, and specifically in grounds of theatricality, which is, after 1950s, even in Bengal, we refer to Utpal Dotto, we talk about Badal Sarkar. So many theatre personalities were coming, and they are making so very deep impact. So when what Badal Sarkar has said about the third theatre, what Utpal Dotto had tried to talk about Jatra as a form. So again, don't you find that Ghatak is also a pioneer in the field of drama?
I'm not an expert on this subject, but I'll try to answer you. The book actually has two other essays, one by Kumar Rai and one by Torit Chaudhary, which are about theatre. But that aside, see, when you talk about his IPTA days, IPTA, or at least the work Ghatak did and his friends did at that time, were not only about the fallout of partition. You have to go back to 1942, the freedom movement, the World War, the famine, the partition, of course, independence, the riots. There are all these massive things, each of which could have crippled a country. Each of these could have crippled a country. And all these things are happening in a 5-year span, with Bengal one of the most affected parts, probably the only really affected part of the country. Now, if you're sensitive, if you're a thinking person, you are going to react. If you have the means to react, lots of people might have been able to react, but were possibly busier trying to find their next meal, and didn't have the time or space to react or think about it intellectually, and so on and so forth. But certainly when it comes to Ritwik, in fact, I wanted to ask you this earlier, but I'll sort of bring it into my answer now, which is I find a very straight line, absolutely undisturbed straight line between his theater work, his short stories to start with. I haven't read his poems except just two of them, but his short stories all the way to Tita Shakti Nodinam, ignoring Jukti Tokko or Goppo, because it was while connected, it was a person's swan song. It was like saying, bye bye, I'm going to die. This is what I wanted to say. So let's not go there. But till that point, there's almost a straight line between his short stories, his theater, Chinnomul, Nobanno, his own cinema, what he taught at FTII, etc., etc., etc. All of it is joined, all of it is positioned on one straight line. And that is the straight line I was talking about earlier, about my people, my story, roots, identity, place in the world, blah blah blah. And you mentioned Dolil and Jala. There was also Shetu, which is the other one, the Shako, Shako, which was communal rights, which was not, obviously communal rights followed partition, so in that sense it's partition also, but it's on the communal rights. And I've read the script, actually. I've read the play. I haven't obviously been able to watch it, but Jala is actually out in a book, in a slim book. It exists, and I've read that also. And they're of a piece, they're of a piece with the films he made as well. Whether other people reacted or not, unfortunately, I haven't researched other people the way I have, Ghatak, so I shouldn't comment. But Bijon Bhattacharya's work, for sure. Nabanno Badio, even apart from Nabanno, some of his other work, Bishotjon was one, which, like you said, Bishotjon is a very straight famine partition story, and so lots of people did. But unfortunately, the party and the IPTA possibly didn't have space for it, which is what led to these people, which is one of the things that led to these people leaving IPTA and or being expelled, and the thing itself kind of dissolving, at least for a while. For a while, the IPTA losing its momentum and going down in relevance was partly because of this, because all these people wanted to continue doing certain things that they were not allowed to do, because it didn't fit in with the party line at that point. Before, after, of course. I mean, I don't know about the rest of the people here, but certainly Sharmishtha Devi, you, we are all, I'm guessing, at least left leaning, if not, party members. We all have we're still idealists, even though it might not have a place in this world, but we continue to be. The party came back, of course, ruled West Bengal for many years. Well or badly, whatever is a matter of opinion. But so there were people doing things, Victor. I'm not an expert, like I said at the start, but there were people trying to do things. There were people trying to do great things. Even afterwards, Shambhu Mitra continued the great work when it came to theatre. Kumar Roy as well, and many others, Badul Sarkar, of course. Pored Dike, I don't know if Rudra Prasad falls in that category. I don't think he does, but he's certainly done very powerful work. Or Jitesh Babu, all of them. Not all partition, of course, but social and political theatre is what I mean. Like I said, partition is only the context. It's the social and political climate of the time that is more important. So kaj hoyeche, but I think increasingly people didn't want to watch or read or listen to things about themselves because it was also bleak.
Yes, completely agree with what you have said. I have a question for Sharmishtha. Sharmishtha, it's very important to, as you have said, that film do have a side which looks for commercial success, which wants, that the producer is investing money and there should be a proper return. It is a very problematic, association where art and commerce both are associated. But here in Ritwik, what we find out that he was a man who cared for the statement, the political statement, or the thing that he wanted to communicate. But he never looked for that kind of commercial success, because the time in which Ritwik was making his films, or Mrinal Sen was making his films, the commercial films that were being made in Bengali, they were so very different. So, what is your take on that particular thing? That what is the most important aspect that a filmmaker has to look for? Because these two are completely opposite things. They are absolutely contradictory.
See, the context is the same today also, even today. You know that the marriage of art and commerce was then questionable, is still now questionable. Because we have seen that happening uh, in a very, very, very few cases. Say one example, I can tell you that the Guppy Bagha trilogy of Ray, not the last one, but the first two parts, you might say that, but again, I'm telling you that is the intelligence, the song, and that form. When we are discussing this, Victor, we need to understand that Ami ja jani, whatever I know, that it is it even pained him. It is that pain which he lived with, that he wanted to communicate with more and more and more people. But when the other films were released after a lot of struggle, with the producers, with his team, the way he wants to do it, and people not coming to the cinema halls. It even pains a creator. That is for sure. Be it a Satyajit Roy or be it, a David Dhawan. It is really a scary Friday when you have come out with something and it is not getting the public support which you actually think should have done. Now, the difference where is the difference? A filmmaker who does it for commercial business, to him it is a commercial failure. इतना पैसा लगाया कुछ काम नहीं आया. But when a person like these people who have made the other kind of cinema, they wanted to come with a thought, inject it into the viewer's mind to change a mind, to change a collective mind. Taito, when your art fails there, that I am not able to reach this certain number, it leaves a deep, deep sorrow inside. It happened with Ritwik Ghatak, I'm sure. Even if I do not know like the man personally, what you have read, I have read also all those things, but it is understandable from a maker's point of view that it will make you think, why did this not happen? So hence there are such stories of Ojantrik, Nagorik, where there is a message, na, a boy, and there's a man queen, and then the man queen takes the boy, shows a different line. What is the maker's thing to communicate? See the other thing from other people's perspective, and whenever we are thinking that it is around us, still we cannot see. So what we cannot see can be, the food for our thought, and he is doing it in a certain form. So what I think is like people who have followed this path afterwards, they were mentally ready, and I to guess the producers were also mentally ready, that we are trying to do something which will not come in terms of business. That is not possible. But again, also, if you see from the producer's point of view, if you take the names of the producers out of the films, you will understand why these producers wanted to do these films. বড়বাজারের গদির প্রডিউসার হতে পারেন, কিন্তু তার তবু একটা ভাবনা ছিল. দ্যাট ইজ হোয়াট আই এম ট্রাইং টু সে. You understand? So, otherwise, why will this man encourage a person like Ritwik Ghatak to even enter his house and pitch a story which has nothing to do with Marwaris? It speaks of something else, something very, very different from his livelihood. So there must a change, Victor, which I have followed, not in our country, but whatever little I have seen in world cinema as well. The change comes in a collaborative system. No one person, no one thought can actually change this. One can think of a thought, but others have to back that thought. And now this is the time where we should understand why these thoughts are still alive within us. Even the younger generation, I don't know, some 40 people are sitting here. If you take an average age, I would understand it will be, I think, below 40, if I'm not wrong. So why? It is the centenary of Ghatak. Again, I'm telling you, a person with one popular cinema and 7 failures. Still, we are talking of those 7 films more than Meghera Katara. And in any institute in our country, wherever you go, you will see that Ritwik is being read. Why? Still, there is food for thought. Still, there is food for thought of art. Still, there is scope that we mend our ways and see and throw light a little light of what we cannot see, we are not being able to see. And there lies the maximum pertinent questions, which, in this light of social media and all, we have already forgotten to ask. We are still in the centenary, on the centenary, we are still finding something through these webinars, through these talks, through the texts, through the films, that even if, we get an answer to something, to all those pertinent questions, because questions, uh, the moral questions, the basic needs, that have not changed much. Whatever we are going through is a synthetic change. The questions are the same. You ask yourself, you'll get the questions. That is why I think that doesn't matter whether art marries commerce or not, whether commerce will take over and that is only success. Then though Ritwik Ghatak is gone, Mrinal Sen is gone, they're all gone cases. Still, we are sitting with them.
Yes, I asked the question primarily because there's a journey.
Just a sec, Victor.
Mhm.
Someone is asking about Ritik's editing pattern and all. See, we are not very technical people. I cannot give you an insight into that. Yes, there are certain things while reading film appreciation course and all. We have gone through this, but at this point of time, I'm just not ready to give you the correct answer. So please forgive me for that. I have seen your question, but this is not the correct time, or I am not right now prepared to answer your question. I'm really sorry. But if you leave the question with Victor, I can come back with an answer to you personally. Thank you so much.
Okay. If anybody do have any question, please do unmute yourself and ask our panelists. But again, we all are lovers of Ritwik Ghatak, so please don't be excessively technical about film, because we appreciate this man's art and we revere and respect this man. But again, we are not from the field of film studies, to be very specific. So don't ask any very technical question. Of course, you have said disruptive and Brechtian. Of course, at that point of time, we most of the research work which have been done, whatever I have read, I can give you a question that the year 1952 was very important for Indian films. 1952, because the first film festival had taken place in the year 52, and where Ghatak had the opportunity of meeting people like Pudovkin, and they have been discussing about films, and they were referring to Soviet montage and the works of Sergei Eisenstein, Battleship Potemkin. They talked about the influence of the Italian neorealism, Vittorio De
Also,
Sica, bicycle theme.
Eisenstein shaped new Ritwik Ghatak,
Absolutely,
He
absolutely,
always used to, have a great, great admiration for Eisenstein.
absolutely. And even people like Mrinal Sen, Satyajit Ray, Hemangu Bishwas, and also Rishikesh Mukherjee, and the tremendous influence of Bimal Rai on Ritwik Ghatak. So I would say it's a conglomeration of all the Western influence and native influence. But the beauty is, as T.S. Eliot has said, tradition and individual talent. He had gathered from the respective influences, but he had spoken his own language, and this is where Ghatak is so unique. And this is what Satyajit Ray had said, that to some extent, most of us had been inspired by Western influence, but somehow it is a mystery and miracle that Ghatak's work is completely devoid of it. And he was so very much original in that.
Can I share an anecdote?
Yes,
When I see Rai and Ghatak, it automatically takes us to a famous, very famous debate going on in IPTA at a point of time between Sholil Choudhury and Hemangu Bishwas. The point was same. Sholil Choudhury used to say that now, since we are going for Michil procession, we should have march song like the western side. So the march song came with Sholil Choudhury and it created a new era. While Hemangu Bishwas was stick got stuck to his roots and say the folk song is our voice, our face, and it will speak of our people. So it was the same kind of debate where when this was said between Rai Ghotok and Chul Chaudhary Hemango Bishar. So that was the time when something new was coming up and people trying to defend it, with their ideas, their thoughts. So just imagine of that time, the names you have just taken, Victor. Just imagine of the time our music industry is growing up, our film industry is coming up, with a complete new thought. But the question was with the form. A little back, you were talking, Shammo, regarding the theater. At that point of time, theater, if you take IPT at that point of time, it was very important. Utpal Dotto also used to, he has, come out in bluntly saying that the theater is, should be used politically.
Of
It is
course.
a political tool
Of
to
course.
reach out to the maximum number of people. Why will be theater done in an academy of fine arts, or say like a hall? Take theater to the ground. Badal Sarkar did it in a different form. So they understood that this is a tool, an art tool, which should be taken to the ground and used as a political tool. That was the ideology.
Absolutely.
So you understand, there were debates not only going on with like whether he understands communism or he is an anti-communist. More than that, all these artistic people with their political ideologies were also struggling with their forms to create something new. And that was like a, so I have goosebumps while I say this and think of it.
So, since this started from the person asking about Ghotok's editing, and Victor and Sharmishtha Devi are absolutely right. We are not experts on the subject. If you don't know the answer yourself, may I just check the name of the person? Shoptoshi. Uh, I mean, if you know the answer yourself, then it's fine. But if not, one easy thing to look out for in Ghotok's films is how, unlike in the cinema of anyone else, most people certainly, music tracks don't fade out. Music tracks stop. There's a hard stop as the scene changes. Normally, you'd expect music tracks or the sound, everything else, to just fade out as you go from one scene to another. In Ghatak's films, when the scene stops, the music is going on and it stops, and then it picks up later when the time is right. From that point, it doesn't come back slowly or softly and fades in and out and so on and so forth. That's the kind of disruptive, an example of the disruptive editing that you're talking about. I'm just giving you an example of sound editing, which is not the same thing as perhaps what you were talking about, but the essence is the same. Things end, things don't fade to black, come back. There are no fade in, fade outs. It's disruptive in the way that things just end, like a conversation ends or something like that. It's something you can actually catch very easily when you watch Ritik's films. By two bit. I mean, I'm not an expert, like I said.
Yes, we understand. Now the question answer, and I want to take up questions. If anybody do have any question, please do unmute yourself and ask any question if you do have for our panelists.
None. So we are done.
Actually, I have a question for you, Victor. Can I ask that?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, I just wanted to know that how did this interest in reading about Ritwik Ghatak's works originate, as far as you are concerned? I mean, how did you start? I mean, what was the starting point?
Uh, actually the starting point is the title of our webinar, Agony and After. The word is agony. Why?
No, no, no,
Uh,
no.
yes,
I'm asking you as your personal journey. That
yeah,
we all know that you
yes,
know a
I
lot about
understand.
Ritwik
Tapaswini, I
Ghatak, but
understand your
how did
question.
you,
Yes.
whatever, how did you start it?
2018, we all know that we, Calcutta University introduced CBCS and later on NEP. We are teaching our students partition literature for the last 7 or 8 years. We are teaching our Bengali students as well as our non-Bengali students. But in none of the papers in partition literature, we talk about that man who had been mostly affected by partition. And for me, it's a big loss because none of our students know pretty much about this man. And I often use this word in my classroom that Ritwik Ghatak is the Megadakatara of Bengali cultural history. So it is the task for the scholars, researchers, and teachers to make our generations know about a man, because that legacy is fading. Because in the month of November, it's 100 years, and after December, after November, we will all forget. So I it was a thing which I disliked, that we are teaching them Amitabh Ghosh, we are teaching them Sadat Manto, but why not the man who had he's a very important figure as far as our cultural history is concerned. So my personal take was to make my students, to make the young minds know about this man, which was so very much ignored in our typical quote unquote syllabus. That was my take. I hope that I've been able to give you the answer.
Hey, even outside of that, as we have alluded to a couple of times in our chat already, the relevance of Ritwik Ghatak, whether you're a film studies person or just a human being, the world hasn't changed. It's only gotten worse, um, and getting worse every day. Whether it's SIR or whether it's then our CCA movement of a few issues of a few years back, the Rohingyas, the Gaza issue, Mexico border, Afghanistan, whatever, Syria, whatever it might be, bigoted governments everywhere, refugee crisis everywhere. The issues that Ghatak talked about, whether it was a result of partition or not, the issues have remained the same about far too many people jostling for far too little space in the world and trying to find their roots and their identities and so on and so forth. That hasn't changed. He's much more relevant today, perhaps, in the world than he was when he was making those films.
Yes, absolutely. And in one of the seminars, I recall Navarun Bhattacharya had said this, that what had happened to the assistant directors who worked with him.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. And that's a very pertinent question. So the assistant directors tend to carry on the legacy. If you refer to Zafar Panahi, who would be the assistant director to Abbas Kiarostami, and then he had his own films to offer to us. So what happened to Ghatak's assistant directors? So again, it's
One of
a
one of the interesting things people keep telling me, well, telling me only because I've been working on him and we're having conversations, but people keep saying is that Ghatak is much more popular in Kerala than in Bengal. A part of that has to do with John Abraham, of course, but if you look at his great students, there's not one Bengali in that list. People who are influenced by him, not necessarily students in the real sense of the term, perhaps Gautam Ghosh a little bit, but outside of that, not one. And Kerala is particularly interesting because Kerala is not connected to partition. Kerala has nothing to do with partition. Of course, they know about partition, but they have nothing to do with it. And he's more popular there than anywhere else in India. It's fascinating, and it's a follow-up to the what you just said, Victor. That none of his assistants learned from him. There was no Nobarun used the word gharana. There was no Ritwik gharana that
yes.
took shape. It did, but not in Bengal. It took shape among his students in the FDII. And we can name a lot of names, but that's where it took shape. So it's very interesting. I don't know if it speaks more of Bengalis or speaks more of other people. If it speaks of Bengalis, it's not spoken of in a very positive light.
Absolutely. Any other question? Okay, before we formally sum up things, I will invite Pooja Mukherjee from Kolkata. Pooja is going to recite a poem. The poem is by Shakti Chattopadhyay, Ritwik Tomar Jonno. Up to you, Pooja.
নমস্কার। এই বছর এক সেকেন্ড, এই বছর যেহেতু ঋত্বিক কুমার ঘটকের জন্ম শতবর্ষ, তো ওনাকে প্রথমে শ্রদ্ধা ও প্রণাম জানিয়ে এবং উপস্থিত সকলকে আমার প্রণাম ও ভালোবাসা জানিয়ে শক্তি চট্টোপাধ্যায়ের কলমে ঋত্বিক তোমার জন্য কবিতাটি আমি আবৃত্তি করছি। এখন নিশ্চিন্ত, মৃত আর ভয় দেখাতে আসবে না, সুদূরের পথে ফেলে দীর্ঘ ছায়া দাঁড়াবে না দাঁড়ে, ভিতরে ভাঙবে না অস্থি ঘর বাড়ি, সন্ন্যাসী সংসার কিছুই করবে না, যাতে মানুষের পাপ স্পর্শ আছে। আছে আছে বলে তুমি যেখানে যা নেই দিতে গেছো, পূর্ণতা পাঠার আর শূন্য খা খা তোমারই। সন্ন্যাসী যা ছিল যখন ছিল তীব্র হয়েছিল তা পাথরে, রূপ ও হৃদয় রক্ত স্বেচ্ছাচার উন্মাদ প্রাণের ভরসা ও ভয় ছিল পাশাপাশি। এখন নিশ্চিন্ত, উপদ্রুত বাংলাদেশ, আর কেউ নেই যে করকাবে, বিদ্যুৎ চাবুকে এই মধ্যবিত্তি সম্পদ সন্তোষ মানুষের। তুমি গেছো, স্পর্ধা গেছে, বিনয় এসেছে, পোড়া পাথরের মতো পড়ে আছো বাংলাদেশে। পাশের ঋত্বিক তোমার জন্যে তুচ্ছ কবি আর্তনাদ করে। নমস্কার।
খুব ভালো, খুব ভালো।
ঋত্বিক তোমার জন্য কবি আর্তনাদ করে। আমাদের ভেতরে একটা তো কষ্ট থেকেই যায়, অ্যাকচুয়ালি দিস ম্যান ডিজার্ভ সো মেনি থিংস, but again we are born in a time in which we can only think about revisiting his work, and I don't know whether we can uh, do anything, but I still do have a doubt that where to take on from here, and what time has in store for us. But again, Ghatak, who was remembered for so many reasons, not just a filmmaker, but a visionary artist. And as I had began at began the session by saying that he's the best example of people's artist. And there have been so many technical aspects about films as well, like the use of the wide lens and the several different angles, which he was very much innovative in, bringing in all these things, like the use of melodrama, the use of psychoanalysis, and also I personally feel that Ghatak is going to be remembered for being the filmmaker of the filmmakers. So again, it is requiring more of an introspection in today's time. I really don't know what, or where we can take it more seriously in the future. But again, I wish that when Shamya comes here to Kolkata, and I could organize an offline, seminar, and that is also going to be a kind of an interest which I do have. I am looking forward to it. And I thank Shamya, I thank Sharmishtha, I thank my teacher, my mentor, Professor Bulu Mukherjee, Associate Professor, New Alipur College. She had been truly supportive, and she has always been there. It was always coming to my mind that I always wanted to do something. So again, I congratulate Shamya yet again for the brilliant book. And the book was much required, because whatever words we use, they all tend to fade. But again, the book remain. And I will, request everyone to read and study and know this man. And also, it's our responsibility to
I just want to interrupt. I just want to interrupt. I also like to mention the book written by Victor himself. That book is also a very well researched book. So we should mention that as well. Thank you, Victor.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to mention that once Victor finished, that it's a very useful book, a very valuable book. And I'm happy that Victor sent it along for me to read as well. It was most enriching.
I really had asked myself that what I can do for this man, the man who had, appealed to me a lot personally. So again, perhaps through this webinar, I had just requested Shamoda and Sharmishtha to be, to bring some time and give some focus into this man, because even after reading Shamoda's book, the book he has edited, and also we had spent so many time discussing about films with Sharmishtha and also with Professor Bulu Mukherjee. It has always been a very productive discussion regarding films itself. So it was an evening in which we had tried to highlight the legacy of this man, who I consider to be a very, very important figure in Bengali cultural history. So it is going to be our endeavor to pass on this legacy to our new generation, who should not let this legacy fade, because this man really mattered a lot. Again, I'll go back to the point where I have ended in the previous talk, that he was a man who was not talking about heroes. He was a man who talked about hunger. He was talking about home, and he was talking about hope. And most of his films had ended in this search of this hope or this optimism. Most of his films. And even what Ghatak has wanted to say is, everything was very much clear in Jukti Takku Goppo. That is a point which I always want to say, that we have plenty of hope, and this is where Ritwik and Rabindranath, Rabindranath is also in Crisis of Civilization. Crisis of Civilization, written in 1941, Anushar Upor Astharanupap. Second, what Rabindranath is saying in Crisis in Civilization, same thing Ritwik is doing in Jukti Takku Goppo. And Bongobala symbolizes Bengal. And he's hopeful about this Bongobala, who is the mother archetype, who would be the emblem of harmony for the future. So it's with this hope we can end. And this is where we can show our respect for this man, Ritwik.
Thank you very much. It was
Thank
wonderful.
you very much.
Thank you everyone for joining, and also thank you everyone for your participation.
Wonderful. Thank you.